This lesson is over how to divide a whole number by a fraction. How do you know that half of 3/4 is equal to 3/8? So as you can tell, we started, this represents a fraction bar. This represents 3/4. So I need to find half of that. So it's this, and this. So that's 3/8. Some of you may see this pictorial model and say, can I just do it mathematically and just multiply the numerators to get 3 and the denominators to get 8? Yeah, you can. So let's look at our do now. Lyle is putting his books on his shelf. He owns 12 books. Each book is 1.5 inches wide. How wide are the books if they are side by side on the shelf? So in other words, he has 12 groups of 1 and 1/2. 12 books, 12 groups of 1 and 1/2. Do you want to do repeated addition of 1.5 plus 1.5 plus 1.5 plus 1.5 plus 1.5 plus 1.5? You could if you want to, but repeated addition is just multiplication. So how do you multiply a mixed number? Well, I know I need to turn this 12 into a fraction form, 12/1. Then I know for 1 and 1/2, I have to write it as an improper fraction of 3/2. So 12 times 3 is 36. 36 multiplied the denominators is 2. 36 divided 2 is 18. Do not do this. I've seen so many kids do this and get this wrong. So, 12 times 1 is 12.5. The answer is 12.5. That's not even reasonable. If you add 1.5 12 times, you'll have 12 whole. But what about all those halves? There's 12 halves. 12 groups of 1/2. That's 6. 12 plus 6 is 18. So the Spartans are celebrating the end of basketball season. The team moms have ordered 4 circular chocolate chip cookie cakes decorated with a team mascot for the celebration. Each person will receive a slice that is 1/8 of the cookie. The moms order enough to feed a team and family members that attend. For how many people did the team moms order cookie cakes? Use the provided circular pieces to model the problem and justify your answer. So here are the cookie cakes. Spartans. Must be the strap for Spartans in Spring Ranch. So they divide it into 8s because each person gets 1/8 of a cookie. I'm too lazy, so I'm just going to copy, paste. They cut this into 8s. They cut this into 8s. And they cut this cookie into 8s. So, let's write this as a division expression. They started with 4 cookies. They divided the cookies into 8s. So 4 divided by 1/8. Now let's answer this. There are 4 cookies. And how many 8s are there in each cookie? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of them. So 4 times 8 is 32. So the answer is 32. By the end of this lesson, you're going to realize this division expression is equivalent to this multiplication expression. You're going to know how to rewrite a division expression into a multiplication expression. So we started with 4 cookies. We are finding how many 8s go in there. And each cookie has 8 pieces. That's why we did 4 times 8 is 32. Maybe you already know how to do it. So we started with 4. And we're finding there are 8 pieces. 4 times 8. 4 divided by 1/8 equals 32. If not, let's continue our lesson. So Keisha has 4 chocolate bars. She offered each of her friends half of a bar. So here are her 4 chocolate bars. Each friend gets half of a bar. Which of the following could be used to determine the number of friends that will receive chocolate? So she started with how many chocolate bars? 4 of them. She divided the bars into halves. C is the answer. So Keisha will be able to give chocolate to how many friends? How many chocolate bars do you see? 4 of them. And how many halves are there in each bar? 2 of them. So 4 times 2 equals 8. So I rewrote this division is equivalent to this multiplication expression. 4 divided by half is the same as saying 4 times 2 is 8. How did I do that? Question, question, question. So at 4 bars, let's use these. I have 4 bars, and I divide them into halves. So how many halves go into 4 bar? 8 of them, as you can see. Each bar has 2 halves. So 2 groups of 1 half. So 4 times 2 is 8. 4 divided by 1 half equals 8. Mrs. Flower has 8 yards of ribbon to make bows for holiday wreath. You see the ribbons. She needs 2/5 of a yard for each bow. Which of the following could be used to determine the number of bows Mrs. Flowers can make? She started with how many bows? How many yards of ribbon? 8 of them. She needs groups of 2/5. So each bow needs 2/5, 2/5, 2/5, 2/5, 2/5, 2/5, 2/5, 2/5. So we're finding how many 2/5 go into 8. So it must be C as the answer. All right, let's show this. So I'm going to divide each bar into fifths. Divide each bar into fifths. Okay, each bar into fifths. Each bar into fifths. Continue. I'm dividing each yard into fifths. I'm going to divide this yard into fifths. And I'm going to divide this yard into fifths. How many fifths do you see here? So we have 8 bars, and how many fifths do you see in all? I see 40 of them. Let's see. There's 8 bars, each one has 5 of them. 8 bars times 5 is 40. So I have 8 started with 8 yards, and how many fifths are there? There's 5 of them. There's 40 of them. So 8 times 5 is 40. Now, it says she needs 2/5 for each bowl. So how many 2/5 are there? There's one group of 2/5 here. There's another group of 2/5 here. There's a group of 2/5 here. There's a group of 2/5 right here. There's a group of 2/5 here. There's a group of 2/5 here. There's a group of 2/5 here. This is a group of 2/5. This is a group of 2/5. And this is a group of 2/5. 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 And this is a group of 2/5. So, first of all, I found how many fifths are there in 8 yards. There's 40 of them. 8 times 5 is 40. Then I broke them into groups of 2. So 40 divided by 2, the answer would be 20. Whoa! Hey, let's look at this. I started with 8 divided by 2/5, and notice how I rewrote it unexpectedly into a multiplication expression of 8 times 5 halves. So I started with 8 bars, 8 yards. I found how many fifths there are. 8 times 5 is 40. Then I've divided into groups of 2. So it started with 8. It seemed like this division turned to a multiplication. And this 2/5 turned to 5 halves. Interesting. We're going to be learning a word called reciprocal, about multiplying its reciprocal, in about a couple minutes. So, our next example, Marcel has 3 feet of wood to make a project. You see each foot. He needs to first cut the wood into 1/4 pieces. How would you determine the number of pieces of wood Marcel can make? So he started with 3 pieces of wood. He divided them into fourths. Or another way you can say it is he started with 3 feet of wood. How many fourths do you see here? 4 per wood. 3 times 4. So they equal 12. Notice how I rewrote how I have a division expression and a multiplication expression. They both are equivalent. 3, 3, division, multiplication, and this 1/4 became a 4 or 4, 1. Have we figured out on your own, discover how to turn a division expression into a multiplication expression, how to rewrite it? Not yet? So before we do that, let's look at this. Most students can figure out how to divide fractions, divide by mixed number, divide a whole number by a fraction, but they have a hard time understanding word problems. They can't figure out if it's a multiplication or a division type of problem. Let me give you a hint. Repeated addition is multiplying. Repeated subtraction is dividing. Louisa has 10 yards of ribbon. How many 1/4 bows can she make? So it's asking how many groups of 1/4 go into 10 yards. Or you have 10 yards, you cut out 1/4, cut out 1/4, cut out 1/4, cut out 1/4. You keep cutting out 1/4 to figure out how many in all. So it's dividing 10 yards divided into fourths. Russell had 4 pounds of candy. He offered each of his friends 1/10 pound of candy. How many friends will receive candy? So he started with 4 pounds. He gave 1/10 away, gave 1/10 away, gave 1/10 away, gave 1/10. Keep giving 1/10 away to each friend. So how many did he give away? So he's finding how many groups of 1/10, or he's subtraction repeatedly. Repeated subtraction. So 4 divided by 1/10 is F. Jonathan has 40 feet of rope. How many 10-foot jump ropes can he make? So he has 40. He cut out 10 foot, cut out 10 foot, cut out 10 foot, cut out 10 foot. So it's repeated subtraction, and so it's division, 40 divided by 10. And a recipe calls for 4 cups of flour. The only measuring cup Maria holds is 1/4 cup. How many 1/4 cups will Maria have to put into the recipe? So we're finding how many 1/4s go into 4, or another way to think of it is, can you cut 1/4 over and over or over, subtract it away and away and away from 4? So it's C. So in order to know how to divide fractions, you have to know the word reciprocal. You're going to hear me say that over and over. You multiply by its reciprocal. So what is a reciprocal? Many people, I've asked a couple of students from previous, or asked people in general, and actually adults, I said, what is reciprocal? They always said, oh, it's when you take the numerator and denominator and you switch it around. You flip it around. That's how you do it, but that's not really the definition. A reciprocal is when you multiply by a value to get 1. So you have 2 numbers. If you multiply both numbers, it will equal 1 whole. It's like the inverse. It's like the opposite. You're undoing it to equal 1 whole. So for example, I start with 1/2. What can I multiply 1/2 to get 1 whole? I multiply by its reciprocal 2, 1 and get 1 whole. So the reciprocal 1/2 is 2, 1. Notice how the numerator and denominator did switch around. So let's do the next one. What is the reciprocal of 1/3? 3, 1. If you multiply 1/3 by 3, 1, you get the value of 1. So reciprocal of 1/3 is 3, 1. What's the reciprocal of 2/3? 3/2. Because if you multiply 2/3 and 3/2, you get 1 whole. What's the reciprocal of 3/4? 4/3. Because if you multiply 3/4 by 4/3, you get 1 whole. What's the reciprocal of 4? Interesting. Can I rewrite 4 into a fraction form? for 1. So now what's this reciprocal? 1/4. Because if you multiply 4/1 by 1/4, that's 4/4 or 1 whole. What's the reciprocal of 6? 6/1, 1/6. What's the reciprocal of 1 2/3? Is this in fraction form, in proper fraction form? Nope, that's 5/3. So what's the reciprocal of 5/3? 3/5. And what's the in fraction form or in proper fraction of 1/3/4, the mixed number? That would be 7/4. So what's the reciprocal of 7/4? 4/7. So again, reciprocal is when you multiply two numbers equals 1 whole. If you just want to know how to do it, you figure out the fraction form and then you flip it around. So Mr. Joe spent 4 hours on his date with Lucy Liu. Every 4/5 hour, she got a phone call. Dang her. Am I that boring? She was bored with me. How many times did she receive a phone call? Sketch, complete the sketch and table. So, here is a clock. We're going to divide this into fifths. Because every 4/5 hour, she gets a phone call. I'm sad about that. So divide this in fifths. So we started with how many clocks? 4 hours. And we split them into fifths. How many fifths do you see here? 5, 10, 20 of them. 4 times 5 is 20. Now it says every 4/5 she gets a phone call. So let's figure out how many 4/5, how many groups of 4 are there? 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's divide this into fourths. Highlighter. 1, 2, 3, 4. Next one, highlighter. How many fourths? 1, 2, 3, 4. Highlighter. How many fourths? 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's divide this into fourths. How? 1, 2, 3, 4. So, there's one group of fourths, 2 groups of 4, 3 groups, 4 groups. The answer is 5. So, we had 20 groups of fifths, and we divide it into fourths. Because I want to know how many groups of 4. Hey, this is how I came up with it. I started with 4 hours. I wanted to find how many groups of 4/5 go into it. So it's a division question. It's the same thing as this multiplication expression of 4 times 5, 4. So now it's time to, if you have not figured out how to divide by a fraction, this is the step. You start with the hour. You start with the whole number. You multiply by its reciprocal. So in other words, you keep the 4. You're changing this division into a multiplication. Then you're finding the reciprocal of 4/5, which is 5/4. So 4 times 5 is 20. 20 divided by 4 is 5. So in order to divide a fraction, you must turn it into a multiplication expression that's equivalent to it. So you keep it, you change it to a multiplication, and it's reciprocal. So let's look at this example. A neighborhood development is 6 acres. It is to be divided into 2/3 lots. So this is the division expression. Rewrite problem as an equivalent multiplication expression. How many thirds are there in 6 whole? 18 of them. Now they want you to divide it into 2 groups. So, here it is. Keep the 6. Change the division into a multiplication. And what's the reciprocal of 2/3? 3/2. 18. 6 times 3 is 18. 18 halves is 9. So you could look at this picture if you want to. In this picture, we can imagine you have 6 whole, and you had to find how many thirds go into 6 whole. There'll be 18 of them. That's why we did the reciprocal. 6 times 3 is 18. Then you need to group them into groups of 2. That's why I divided by 2. So let's do these examples. You have 8. How many fifths go into 8? So 40 of them. And then we're finding groups of 2. Or if you don't like that explanation and you just want to really just do it, keep the 8, change the division into a multiplication because you're multiplying by its reciprocal. What's the reciprocal of 2 5 halves? So that'll be 40. 8 times 5 is 40. 40 halves is 20. Again, if you don't know how I got that, turn this 8 into a fraction form. 8 times 5 is 40. 1 times 2 is 2. That's a 2. Next one. How many 5/8 go into 3? So we started off with 3 whole. How many 8s are in that? 24 of them. Now we want to divide them in fifths. We want to group them into 5s. So in other words, we keep the 3, we change the division into a multiply, and then we multiply by its reciprocal. 5/8 is 8/5. So that'd be 24 fifths. Or 4 and 4/5. So the question is, how do you rewrite a problem as an equivalent multiplication expression? Let's look at this text. So it's called multiply it by its reciprocal. Some people need to know you keep the first number, then you multiply. So you change the division into a multiply, and then you do the reciprocal. And that's how you divide a fraction.